The 2024 version of Dream for All added a new layer that's confusing everybody. So let me see if I can help clarify it. You have to be a first-generation home buyer in order to qualify for Dream for All. But what does that actually mean? So I want to first say there's a second component to this that creates even more confusion. The fact is, not only does one of the borrowers have to be a first-generation home buyer, all of the borrowers have to be a first-time home buyer. First-time home buyer, very different from first-generation home buyer. So first-time home buyer says that you have to be a borrower, a buyer, who has not had an ownership interest in any principal residence, the key being principal. So a house that you personally lived in anytime in the last 3 years that you owned or that your spouse owned. So that's it. That's the definition, not a first generation, but a first-time home buyer. It is, are you or did you at any point in the last 3 years live in a home that was owned by you or owned by your spouse? If the answer is no, then you qualify as a first-time home buyer. Everybody who's on the loan must meet that criteria of being a first-time home buyer. But the second part's equally or more confusing because it's different timelines and different rules. The second part says first-generation home buyer, and that is one borrower on the application must be a first-generation home buyer. So a first-generation home buyer has two parts. The first part says if you personally have been on title, held an ownership interest, or been on a mortgage of any home in the last 7 years, you're not first generation. So it's going back 7 years for you personally instead of just 3 for the first-time home buyer. And it isn't just saying owner occupied, it's saying any property. Could have been a rental property, could have been a property you co-signed for your uncle. It could have been a property that you got added to title because your parents wanted you to have, or some relative wanted you to have ownership interest in the property. So if you're the one that's trying to qualify as a first generation home buyer, the first part of that is you personally cannot have been on title or on any mortgage, including co-signing of a mortgage, anytime in the last 7 years. On top of that, your parents, biological or adoptive, do not currently own a home, or if they're deceased, they didn't own a home at the time that they passed. It's that simple, okay? Now, they say in the United States, so all of these are in the United States. The final piece is if you ever spent any time in foster care or institutional care, and they go on to specifically say that is a type of out-of-home residential care for large groups of children by non-related caregivers. So if you're ever in that situation, you automatically qualify as a first-generation homebuyer. Okay, so one person on the application has to be a first-generation homebuyer. Everybody on the application has to be a first-time homebuyer. It's critical to understand that. A couple simple scenarios. I had a client I was talking to who was buying with their parents. So you were buying with your parents. Now, their parent owns a home. So therefore, they don't qualify as a first-generation homebuyer. But the child that is buying with the parents we look at that level up and say, well, you're buying with your mom. Therefore, your mom is not on title of a home because she has to be a first-time home buyer anyway. But I'm also looking at the fact of what about your father or you've got two parents typically. Does your other parents currently own a home or did they own a home when they passed? Those are the things that we're looking at. This is going to get more confusing, not less, but I want to keep giving you as much information as I can to help you to resolve these questions and help you to make your California dream come true. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Let me know if there's anything I can help you with. And if you are ready to start the process, click it right there. So if you think that it's time for you to start, you go to my website, start the application process. My team and I are looking forward to taking great care of you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.